너 애기 아저씨 집에 가봤어? 애기 아저씨 집에? 몇 번 가봤어? 몇 번?
A 28-year-old mother was found deceased after a brutal attack, and even someone started a fire to cover up the evidence. But her 4-year-old child would survive to tell the story. She distinctively recounts and remembers who have done this to her. But was the man that she pointed to the real suspect? Or could her memories be mixed with other people in her life that she would point to the wrong suspect? This is an incredible story of how a 4-year-old child would solve her own mother's murder mystery. I love to learn and share these incredible true crime stories, so just a like in these videos, subscribing, commenting, engaging all helps. It was August 22nd, 1996, around 12:30 a.m. in the Huam districts of Seoul. In the middle of the night when a lot of people were about to go to sleep, the emergency line would get a call saying that there was a fire that broke out in a villa. The neighbors would report of burnt food smell, then now thick smoke, and it seemed like the fire was not started that long ago. So the fire department's team was called. They hurried up to the 4th floor of this villa, and it seems like the door to this villa was already slightly open. The rescue team went inside through the black smoke, and the first thing that they heard, to their surprise, was a child crying. They would find a 4-year-old little girl, and there's actually a live video of this. And you could see she is covered in smoke. She seems burnt. It seems like she had some bleeding going on around her head, yet she was conscious and crying. Now, as the rescue team was holding her and bringing her to safety, you could see her literally pointing to her apartment villa and going, "Mommy, mommy." So this possibly indicated that this child knew that there was someone else inside of the apartment. And fortunately, only within 10 minutes, the fire was tamed and the rescue team was scouring the place, where they would find an unconscious woman lying flat on the floor inside of her room. Later, we would find that this woman actually was already dead. She has already passed, and it was odd because usually if there's a fire, the woman or anyone trying to run away would be found near the door trying to escape, but she was literally lying just flat as if she was already gone before the fire started. Not to mention the drawers were pulled. There were like papers and things everywhere where it seemed like somebody might have came in and wanted to find something or steal something. The child was taken to the hospital right away, and not only burnt marks, but the child was bleeding from the head as if she was hit. And the autopsy results of the 28-year-old mother stated that she did indeed pass away before the fire started, and found head injuries and wounds all over her body that was unrelated to the fire. Police knew that this was most likely a homicide and started to question the only witness that was there, the 4-year-old child. Now, this 4-year-old little girl named Mimi, she was half Korean and half Japanese. Her father was Japanese, and her father wasn't there at the time. It seems like the father was going back and forth from Japan and Korea often, so it could be that he was out of the country. So on the second day of the hospital, the police came in to try and question the little girl. And when asked what happened, this is what she said. Her first words were, "아저씨." Now, 아저씨 means an older man that is non-blood related, so technically it's translated to like uncle. Then she said, "The uncle hit my mommy and me. He came during the day and at night. Hit with hand. Mommy, mommy, I'm scared." And right after that statement, very shortly, the child got really distressed. She started crying and did not want to talk anymore. Now, during the couple of days, police could not find any evidence of who might have been there. And this was back in the 90s, so you didn't really have DNA testings, any technology and things like that. So 4 days later, they would go back to the little girl, hoping that she calmed down a little bit and would give more information. This time, police asked again who did it. And the baby replied, "Uncle with the baby," or 애기 아저씨. There was a slight controversy within this case. Again, this was back in the 90s. In this day and age, I'm sure they would bring a professional child psychologist that deals with trauma and things like that. But back then, it was usually the police that still came and did the interrogation no matter how old you were. So just keep that in mind. The only clue that they had from this 4-year-old, you guys, was 애기 아저씨, Uncle with the baby. So the police started to look around the family, friends, and see who the baby would call Uncle with the baby. They trimmed it down to a couple people, but one man stood out. His name was Mr. Lee. He was 31 years old and only lived 5 minutes away from Miss Kim, the victim's house. Now, Miss Lee was the son-in-law of this older woman that Miss Kim, the victim, was close to. So the victim, Miss Kim, was also friends with Mr. Lee and his wife and the mother-in-law as well. And indeed, Mr. Lee was married, had a child of his own, and another on the way. And with the help with family and friends, they were able to get photographs of Mr. Lee, and this is what he looks like. So the police thought, well, this could be a potential, so they would take his photograph and would take it to the child at the hospital. Now, there are little criticisms where maybe the police should have brought in multiple different faces for her to really identify. It seems like the police only brought in Mr. Lee's photos because they were pretty sure this could be the man, and maybe they just wanted to get straight to the point. I'm not sure, but what do you guys think? So on August 27th, only about 5 days since the incident, the investigators pulled out a photo of Mr. Lee and asked, "Who is this?" Mimi replied, "Uncle with the baby." Police said, "This is the uncle?" The child said, "The one who hit Mom." Now, this was not recorded in tape. Again, the protocol was a little different in the 90s, but this was the statement that the police gave. What they decided to do next was actually bring in Mr. Lee to the hospital for the girl to see. I don't know who thought of that idea, but so with police escort, Mr. Lee walked into the child's room just to verify if she would recognize him. So the girl was relaxed at the hospital, recovering with her father. That's when Mr. Lee walked in. Quote, it says, "She gave the most shocking face, jumped up like she saw a ghost, held her fist really tightly, and went into a fetal position." And this all happened within 1 or 2 minutes since Mr. Lee walked in. I feel so bad for the little girl. She literally went through trauma multiple times now, but police have to do what they have to do to try and capture the suspect as quickly as they can. After Mr. Lee left, the child started to cry and scream and tell everyone to please close the door, lock it. She was in a frantic, and her dad asked, "Is that the man?" She said yes, and then she shut down and would not want to talk anymore. So noticing these odd, frantic behaviors by this little girl, they decided to arrest him immediately and take him for actual questioning. Now, as he was in the interrogation room, this was summer, it was hot, but Mr. Lee was wearing long sleeve button-up shirts, and he started to sweat because it was so hot. So police asked him, "Hey, why are you wearing a long sleeve? Can you please take it off for me?" Mr. Lee unbuttoned and took his shirt off, and that's when police noticed that he had a lot of bruises and scratch marks all over his body, his arms, his torso, and including bruising in his eyebrows and his forehead. When asked about all these scratches, Mr. Lee claimed that it had nothing to do with Miss Kim passing. He was not in a fight. He showed them photos of him fixing the cable in his villa, in his apartment. And he was like reaching for the trees and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, I got scratches from that, doing that." Regarding the bruises on his forehead, he claims that these marks were because he hit his head under the table while taking care of the baby. Regarding his swollen and bruised eyebrow area, he did not know where that came from. There was also fingerprint marks on his neck, like somewhere here. When asked about that, he claims, "Oh, me and my wife, we were trying to do some adult time and she scratched me." I mean, it's a little suspicious of all these fresh bruises and marks. Could it be that he was potentially in a struggle, a fight, somebody trying to fight back? Mr. Lee also strongly denied and said that he doesn't even really know Miss Kim that well and had no business or money exchanged ever. Police did try to keep him arrested and in jail until the investigation was finished, but unfortunately, the prosecutors said that there was not enough physical evidence to keep him behind bars, and they could not rely on the 4-year-old's witness statement just yet. So he was technically set free. So police decided to dig deeper, and they found some suspicious bank account activity with Mr. Lee and Miss Kim. It was actually a lie that Miss Kim and Mr. Lee never had any money exchange or business going on. In Miss Kim's diary and in her financial statement, she wrote that she actually borrowed Mr. Lee close to $8,000. So she had a check that was written to his name, and it seemed like she was writing down every time he would pay back this $8,000, which was paid in full. But it wasn't just that. Mr. Lee started to borrow a lot more money from Miss Kim. When questioned about this, Mr. Lee said, "To be honest, without my wife's knowledge, I did borrow money from Miss Kim." This is when things get pretty tricky. Police found that Miss Kim had a bank account, but it was an account under Mr. Lee's wife. So I guess back then in the 90s, you were able to have bank accounts under somebody else's name, but it was like you were able to have this joint account or something like that. Like back in the days, bank accounts, at least in South Korea, was very lenient. They didn't even sometimes check IDs and things like that. But the day that she was killed, on August 22nd, ironically, was the day that the bank had stopped any access of money to that bank account of Mr. Lee's wife and Miss Kim's joint account. Police also found that Mr. Lee had borrowed about $10,000 from the bank previously and used another $10,000 from his wife's account. And he was actually in a lot of debt, over $20,000. And is it a coincidence that the day that Miss Kim passed away was the day that the last loan repayment was due? So could it be that Mr. Lee, who was so fearless about borrowing other people's money, didn't want to pay that back? Was he angry that the bank account has closed any access for him to get money into? Was he bitter at the person that has helped him out, no longer wanted to lend him money? Or could it mean that if Miss Kim passed away, technically it's like also still her account or something, so maybe he didn't have to pay the money back if the person passed away? Police also put him under a lie detector test. There were 4 questions regarding Miss Kim's passing, and he obviously all said, "No, I was not the murderer. No, I wasn't there." But all the questions, it showed that he was deceptive. Neighbors also recount that a little earlier that night, around 9:20 p.m., they heard a woman screaming and a kid crying. They also heard slamming sounds. It seemed like the kid was maybe running around, but they thought, well, maybe the couple upstairs are just having a couple fight. But police believe this was when the actual crime took place, when Miss Kim was murdered and attempted murder of her daughter. Mimi, the little girl, confessed and said that the man came in earlier during the day and at night. So police believe that Mr. Lee might have came to the house earlier during the day, maybe discussed something about the money. Hey, why can't I access it? And then he got angry and he came back at 9 p.m. to murder the mother and the child. But Mr. Lee said, wait a minute, I do have an alibi. He claims around 9 p.m. he was with his wife. They were watching TV and his wife said, hey, I'm craving some hamburgers because she was pregnant. So he decided to just leave without telling her to kind of surprise her pregnancy cravings, and decided to take a taxi to the fast food area to get some hamburgers, then took a taxi again to the supermarket to get some apples. Then he says that he bought $4 worth of meat for the baby. When trying to confirm this, the supermarket staffs say that, well, yeah, there was a man, it seemed like it, but they couldn't really remember the exact date because there were many customers, it's not like they're gonna remember one specific person. And even if he did go to the supermarkets, technically his house was only 5-minute walk from Miss Kim, the victim's house, so he could have gone in and out and still went to the supermarket. Mr. Lee claims that after he got the groceries, he went back home, stayed home, and around 12 a.m. is when his relatives came home and opened the door for them. So his relatives does remember that around 12 a.m. when they came back home, that Mr. Lee did open the door for them. The relatives do not remember if Mr. Lee came in with them right away or if he came in a couple minutes later, but police believe that because it was only a 5-minute walking distance to Miss Kim's house, he could have opened the door, told the relatives, hey, I'm gonna, have a quick smoke break, literally walked or ran to her house within 3 minutes, started a fire, then quickly came back. So that could have only been 15-20 minutes. So police are saying that 12 a.m. to 12:20 a.m. when the fire was started, it was possible that Mr. Lee could have traveled there and came back. Now, why did he go back? Was he anxious? that he might have left some evidence, or maybe that the victims were still alive. Really incredible, but I'm guessing that the little girl Mimi, if this was true, from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m., she might have been unconscious, but the neighbors did not hear the child screaming or crying after that. So she could have been unconscious for hours, even up to the point when Mr. Lee came back to start the fire. Police knew that they needed more evidence, so on September 7th, Mimi would come to a hotel to do an official investigation, tape recorded this time by the police. She then again consistently, since the day of the incident, she said, the uncle with the baby, 애기 아저씨.
진술을 들었습니다.
여러분 뭐 건강하시다.
아저씨,
누군 아저씨?
이게 아저씨.
애기 아저씨라고?
Police then would show her a photograph of Lee again. And in this video, you could see her immediately crying and putting her face like this.
애기 엄마라고? 애기
Then police ask her, have you been to his house and how many times? And she kind of points like this. Maybe she's saying a couple times. What did he do to you that day? That's when she would make this pinching little motion with her little hands, indicating a possible choking. Then asked her to kind of show it to her father. And crazy enough, the autopsy also stated that she has been choked.
할머니랑 또 누구 오고?
엄마랑
어떻게 해서 그 아저씨가? 병원에 왔던 아저씨가? 너랑 목 조이고 엄마는?
Police now took the child to the streets and asked her, hey, if you've been to the house, can you point how to get there? You could see the tapes of her literally pointing the officers and her father to where this 애기 아저씨, uncle with the baby's house was. And it's incredible because she's 4 years old and she remembers exactly how to get there. And guess what? By the time that they arrived and she pointed, this is the uncle's house, guess whose house it was? It was Mr. Lee's freaking villa. And I guess they wanted to question the baby again. I don't know, maybe because it wasn't enough recorded. But on November 22nd, they made the father ask the little girl again on voice recording tape. But this could be because they wanted the child to be consistent. They did not want 1 or 2 statements. They wanted her throughout different months and time for her to really recollect and not change the statement, because that would mean that her memories might be off.
ここでカンカンした？どこ？
みなきの部屋。
ん？
みなきの家あって。
カンカンした？
うん。
ここでカンカンした？
ここでカンカンした。ダメあ、ダメ。じゃあやめれ。
いい。ちゃんとパパいるから大丈夫。
やめれ。
どうしてみなきの部屋に行った？애기 아저씨。
엄마가 네. 살려주세요.
That's all she would say, and then would start to cry. Now, the preparation of all of this and getting the investigation took 2 years. And in 1999, when Mimi turned 7 years old, that's when the official trial began. And in this trial, they decided to bring the little girl and have her questioned in front of the judge. The judge would ask her same questions. Who did it? Do you remember? And she was consistent. And this is when now the court decided to bring in Mr. Lee to, I guess, try to have her point to the suspect. And when Mr. Lee walked into the courtroom, according to all the witness statements, they say that the little girl ran and hid under the desk, shivering and crying, even after all these years, only 3 years. But now Lee, the suspect's family, kind of questioned this. They were like, well, what if the little girl was coached? Because that is a high possibility, especially if she's so young. If their relatives went up to her and said, who was it? Was it this uncle? Was it that uncle? Did he do it? And the baby might be like, yeah, like it was him. And then they would go by that every statement, and maybe her memories were construed and like she kind of had that memory implanted inside of her. Other experts looking at the videotapes and footages say that, well, this kid really shows the behaviors of PTSD. Every time she looks at this one particular person, that's when she reacts at a such high distress that she does not show with anybody else. So this is credible. On November 26, 1999, the court did accept Mimi's statements and they did find her credible. Lee was finally sentenced to life imprisonment. He did appeal 2 times and it went to the high court, but all of them were denied. So the court and everybody did believe and see her statements as credible. So what do you guys think? Do you think Mimi's memories were construed? Was something implanted in her? Did they question it wrong? Or did Mimi see what she saw and she knew exactly who the murderer was? And think about how Mr. Lee probably felt when he saw the child alive and got that news. I'm sure he was peeing in his pants. This story kind of reminded me of the story that I did with this little boy where in South Korea, a man had literally thrown acid on this little boy. Now, unfortunately, in that case, the little boy was turned, so he didn't see the person's face, but he does say that he remembers the ajashi, the uncle's voice. They did have somebody in mind who could have done it, but because the little boy, like his statements was considered not credible because he was so young, that unfortunately in that little boy's case the statement was not taken seriously. But if his statements was taken seriously like in this case, what do you think would have happened? Do you think that murder would have been solved? Because that boy, little Tae, he ended up passing away due to his injuries, and still decades later nobody knows who did this to him, and the murderer got away. But let me know what you guys think and see you guys in my next video. Today we're going to be talking about the ongoing unsolved case of influencer Ahyoung. There was just so much mystery and things to uncover with this case, and we might not get the answers for a while, but there has been a lot of rumors and misinformation regarding Ahyoung's case. Are the suspects really guilty? Is there more to the story? I think there is. Did this influencer's cryptic message that she left on Instagram have anything to do with her death? I would love to know your opinion because I am so conflicted. If you're from Cambodia, or maybe if you're Chinese, you might be able to give us a little insight on the background of the suspects. You guys always know I do my best to cover these cases that are not well known in English. I do translate a lot of them, watch hours of videos. So just a like in today's video, subscribing, leaving a comment on your thoughts all help to keep this channel running. So who is BJ Ahyoung? She was, I believe, 32 years old and she was a streamer. BJ basically means a streamer, but in Korea, the biggest streaming platform is something called Africa TV. She had over 200,000 followers on Instagram. She was pretty well known in the streaming community. Here's some videos of her talking. So on this Instagram post, it basically says that she's gonna be quitting as a streamer. She's gonna be going to a normal lifestyle. It says 일반인 means like normal, no entertainment, no streaming. And quote, it says, when I return to Korea, I will be uploading a video message. Now, this is interesting because she says that she's going to be releasing some kind of a message once she returns to Korea. She did not specify what this was, but her intent was to return to Korea after the trip and release whatever message that she had. So one of the person that influencer knew, I guess in real life / I believe he was kind of like a fan as well, when she announced her retirement plans, he DM'd her saying, "What are you gonna do now?" She replied, "I'm having a stalker problem, so I came overseas. I'll release a video once I'm back." So does this mean that she was dealing with a really bad stalker problem, which could have led to her retirement, which could have led her to go overseas to run away from all of this? I mean, she used to be a streamer, so you could have a lot of like hardcore fans maybe sending her a lot of money. There has been a couple stories where mega fans will stalk the person, trying to get closer to your favorite influencer and streamer. So maybe she was dealing with something like that, but we do not have any answers. Unfortunately, because her case happened in Cambodia and not in Korea, I don't believe that the Korean police are looking into anything about her in Korea at this moment. So influencer Ahyoung arrived in Cambodia on June 2nd. She was to stay with this Korean friend that lived in Cambodia again with her husband, and it's only been 2 days into the trip when Ahyoung went missing. Now on the 6th of June, the Korean friend would ask neighbors if anyone has seen her, and she asked the neighbors to see any CCTV footages that they own to try and find her friend. And that's when again her friend and the neighbors called the police and filed a missing report person. Now there's still some mystery about this as well. I'm not sure if it's suspicious or not, but it is odd that your friend from a foreign country came to Cambodia, not even like the main town, but she's been missing for 2 days. I mean, maybe she thought that maybe her friend is an adult. Adults can do anything. You can go home for the night with someone after partying. You just never know. But you know, if I had a friend that came all the way from South Korea to America and she was staying with me in my house, but then she went missing, she did not come back home, and she didn't tell me where she was going, or maybe she did tell me where she was going and she did not come back for 2 days. I mean, I would be worried. I would probably, the next day I would probably go to the police and try to find her. But again, I mean, being adults, maybe the friend thought and knew Ahyoung's patterns. Maybe she did disappear for a couple days at a time before. You just never know. And on June 6th, just 40 minutes away from where she was last seen, Ahyoung's body would be found. So looking at the CCTV footages, they found influencer Ahyoung going into this Chinese couple-owned clinic. Now this clinic is interesting because again, it is Chinese couple-owned, and on the sign it says that they do pretty much everything. This clinic says that they do gynecology, facials, like dermatology, primary care, and there were a couple other things that they do. So they were like pretty much a hospital, but not really a hospital. Now I know in at least Korea, they do not have a clinic like this. Maybe in Cambodia, maybe in China, because it was Chinese owned. Is this normal? You guys let me know. But and people have seen outside looking in, it does not look like a hospital or a doctor's clinic at all. If anything, it does look like maybe a small pharmacy. But the important thing is they saw Ahyoung enter the clinic 2 times. So on June 3rd, she would enter the clinic and leave. We don't know what she did there. And on June 4th, the day she went missing, she went back to this clinic for whatever reason. Now, I do have to say this clinic was only 5 minutes away from her friend's house, so not a long walk, but it seemed like she's walking like she's been there before. Now, when Koreans who's been to Cambodia, who lives in Cambodia, they say that it is unusual for foreigners to especially walk into a Chinese couple-owned clinic if you're sick or in need of something. So right there, that's also a mystery why Ahyoung decided to go to this clinic specifically. So a couple days later, Cambodian police released that they have found the suspects, and the accused are the owners of the clinic, and they're a married Chinese couple living in Cambodia. And the husband is 30 years old and the wife is 39 years old. And they also found out that this clinic is operating illegally. They had no license, no doctor's license, nothing. Now, looking at the CCTV footages, only a couple minutes after Ahyoung went in, you could see someone shutting the light off to the clinic. Now, police believe this is around the time when Ahyoung might have passed away and someone realized it. Professionals also say that it does look like the two couple going back and forth outside of the clinic as if they might have been nervous about something or heard some kind of information, or at least an acknowledge of what might have happened. At 9 p.m., you see the couple ride the motorcycle and going off somewhere. And at 1 a.m., the couple would come back with their car together. Both of them would go inside the clinic, come back out, etc., going back and forth. And this is where police believe that Ahyoung's body was carried onto their car and disposed. And the whole thing took about 9 hours since they believe Ahyoung passed away. Now, when Ahyoung's body was first found on June 6th, the Cambodian police or the media did release some misinformation, where it was first reported that they believe Ahyoung was severely abused because they did see a lot of bruises. People who might not be medically forensic trained might think it was abused, but later on, professionals actually confirmed that they do not believe Ahyoung was abused, that she was swollen in the face, red, capillaries showing, blood veins. Because Cambodia is so hot, she's been disposed and it seems like the body was decomposing. But the police did charge them for murder, and now they're crying for help because they believe that they are innocent. So the male suspect's sister was interviewed, and they claim that there is no way that their sister-in-law and their brother would have done anything to harm anybody, at least on purpose. They just had a newborn baby. They just opened up the clinic only 3 months ago, and they've never shown signs of harming anybody on purpose. And before they find any physical evidence, they've accused and charged the couples, which should be illegal. But in Cambodia, apparently it works a little different. You could charge the suspects and they can be in prison up to 3 years while the investigation is going on. So in other countries, you could only keep a suspect in prison for like a month. Like in South Korea, it's only about a month, and you have to get the investigation started and finished by a month to have enough evidence to charge them. If you don't, you have to release them. But in Cambodia, it's 3 years. It's a very long time. So that could be one of the reasons why the Cambodian investigation team, they're not rushing the autopsy or anything, which is one of the reasons why this case can take a longer time to be solved. So let's talk a little bit more about the suspects and the couple. So apparently the wife, a 39-year-old woman, came from a medicinal background. Father, her mother, her family came from a medicine background, but she herself did not have any license. She herself did not have proper documents to run a clinic in Cambodia. Her husband, the 30-year-old man, also does not have any documentations, but learned the medical field and how to administer shots and everything through his wife. And apparently this was a place where Chinese people living in Cambodia would come to get like rare Chinese medicines you can't get there. All we know for now, because it was an illegally operating business, nobody's probably willing to come forward and say that they've been there. Now, this is the version that the family of the suspect give. And we're gonna get to what the suspect said in their interview, but they believe Ahyoung came in for something called the alumni shot. Alumni shot is apparently popular to Chinese people, and this shot is apparently to help with cold, immunity, if you need a little bit of boost. But they accuse the influencer of bringing her own drug and administering the drug herself, and that she overdosed on this medicine. They accuse her of using propofol. This is actually a very hot topic in South Korea. Propofol is an anesthesia, but it is known as like the milk shot, where people who have insomnia, celebrities who like to feel relaxed and who can't get enough sleep, who are very stressed, they sometimes have connections to doctors and they illegally administer this anesthesia so that they get a deep sleep. And it's been a hot topic in South Korea, and sometimes they say that Koreans come to foreign countries where you can get this drug over the counter for cheap. Okay, so let's say she overdosed. People ask, well, why didn't they call the police? Why didn't they call for help? Why did they dispose the body themselves? And according to the family, they say that the couples knew of the dark side of Cambodian police and that they're very corrupt. And because the family were very poor, they just opened up the clinic. They didn't want to get into any legal battles or be bribed for money. They believe that the police would ask them for a large sum of money to cover it up or to not make up stories about it if they did call the police for help. And because they couldn't be afford to be bribed by the police, that they just decided to get rid of it themselves. So the documentary crew went to jail to meet the couple. The husband claims that Ahyoung came to the clinic asking for aluminum shots, but seeing her condition, he didn't want to administer it for whatever reason. But he says that he did take her $5 for the shots. He also claims that he stuffed few needle marks on her arms already. She also told him that she was having insomnia and just wanted some injections to help with that. And he claims that she wasn't feeling well, so she decided to sleep on their bed, the patient bed, and he just allowed her to take some rest while he went to play phone games. He says that a couple hours later, he came back to check on her, and by then she was foaming in her mouth and unconscious. He decided to give her a Chinese medicine that was supposed to help with blood flow and gave her about 4 to 5 tiny pills to try and bring her back to life. He also tried CPR, but she was pretty much gone by then and decided to just dispose the body after. The 10-minute visitation was over and the crew decided to go back the next day to ask more questions. The crew asked, "Did you move the body with your wife?" He says, "She didn't know. I was alone when this happened. When she saw Ahyoung, I just told her she's a patient taking a rest." Then later, my wife asked to go eat late at night, referring to why he drove the car with his wife at 1 a.m. While she went to the bathroom inside of the clinic, I moved the body to the car. Then I dropped her off at the restaurant. I told her I'll be back. I then proceeded to dispose the body. My wife is taking care of a newborn at the time, so she was really busy. I admit I disposed the body. I was so scared and so poor. I told the police all this, but they already closed the case. If you, Korean documentary crew, twisted this story and sell it as a twisted version, I can sue you later, right? So the documentary crew was a little confused in his answers. First, he's saying, I could sue you, right, if you twist the story. I mean, it seems kind of heartless for you to say. And they were confused that if a foreign woman came to your clinic claiming that she was sick and she passed away, you just decide to dispose her body. I mean, that kind of seems pretty heartless. And the fact that you weren't willing to help her. And we see on the CCTV footages that Ahyoung came to the clinic on June 3rd, the day before she went missing. And when asked about this, he claims that yes, she did come for the first time on June 3rd, again asked for shots, but he refused the first time. And he told the same story that she decided to sleep on the bed for a couple hours, which is really weird, right? Like a patient going to a clinic, they don't help you, and you decide to sleep on the patient's bed for a couple hours when your dorm is only 5 minutes away. And then you come back the next day knowing that they're gonna refuse you for whatever you wanted, and then you sleep on their bed again? Huh? Now, by this time, at least in the beginning, a lot of people thought that maybe the Chinese couple knew that Ahyoung was an influencer. She had thousands of followers and she was a streamer. And knowing that she's a Korean lady, maybe thinking that she had a lot of money, decided to manipulate her or try to like bribe her for money. And there were also rumors and hate comments claiming that Ahyoung went to Cambodia because she was a sugar baby, because she had that image of being a streamer. So a lot of hate comments that she was a sugar baby, that she was doing drugs illegally. You know, a lot of rumors that surfaced in the beginning. So could it be true that the influencer went to this clinic to administer an illegal drug to make her feel better? Now again, propofol is an anesthesia, and professionals who have looked at the CCTV footage of Ahyoung walking around that day and the day before, they don't believe that she had anything to do with the anesthesia. At least according to the professionals, people who take this anesthesia usually do not want to get out of the bed all day. They're usually a little, out of it, a little slow, but it seems like Ahyoung was walking perfectly fine. They don't see any signs that she was administered this drug 2 days in a row. Now here is what the wife said in her interview. Now she also claimed that she was looking after the baby, so she did not see Ahyoung at all, which is hard to believe because you see in their CCTV that the couple's grandmother would bring the baby for only a couple minutes and leave. So the wife, it seemed like, wasn't even taking care of the baby majority of the day. She was with her husband inside of the clinic and God knows what they were doing. And remember, they were in the motorcycle and in the car together. So it seems like they were never separated. So to think that you're inside of your own small clinic and not even know that someone passed away and your husband is packing up a body seems pretty unbelievable. She also said in the interview she thinks that Ahyoung brought her own shots and administered it herself at their clinic. But if you see the footage, unlike the couple's allegations, Ahyoung seems like she's only holding her phone in her comfy clothes with her slippers. You don't see a pocketbook. I mean, could she have something hidden under her clothes? Maybe, but from this, it does seem like she's only holding her phone and nothing else. But in their first interrogation record with the Cambodian police, this is what they told the police. The couple claimed that they administered a plasma injection to her 2 times and she fell into a seizure. Now this plasma injection is apparently made by using your own blood, and with the concentration of the patient's own blood, it is separated into different layers where the platelets are injected into the injured areas such as torn muscles, torn ligaments, and etc. It's usually used when you have pretty bad injuries. injuries, but it does not look like Ahyoung has any bad open wound injuries where she would be needing the shot. Professionals also say that it is highly unlikely that a platelet injection would cause death. So it does seem like the couple's story are changing a couple times. Now, without doing a full autopsy, this is the only evidence we have so far, which is number one, police say that she was found with her underwear backwards. So police are still in the fence about was she assaulted. What kind of grown woman wears their underwear backwards? Now again, was she really out of it for whatever reason? She was sick, whatever, and she just woke up and wore underwears backwards that day? Or did something happen in the clinic where somebody else put her underwear backwards? So police are saying they're looking into assault case, but the husband claims that, hey, if I did assault her, do an autopsy because you will not find anything. I've never done that to her. Now, as a woman, if you wear your underwear backwards, it's pretty noticeable. Like, it's uncomfortable. You'll pretty much notice it, but if she was under really something, yeah, you might be out of it and not know or not care about it. But number two, a drug test was done with her urine and it came back negative. They did not specify which drug test was done, but I'm guessing urine test does pretty much the most popular or the most common drugs that are out there. But professionals do say you have to do a full autopsy to see what substance was in her body to be completely sure. And that has to be done right away because, again, in Cambodia, you have 3 years to investigate. Now, by then, the body might deteriorate and you might not get any toxicology reports unless you do it early on, like right now. It's been about a month. They should hurry and do this autopsy. And so far, again, with no autopsy, they are claiming that they believe she passed away from choking. The most interesting thing is Ahyoung's phone has never been found. It is still missing till this day. And they believe that this motorcycle scene was when they decided to dispose her phone. But why do you think they decided to dispose it separately from the body? Was it because they didn't want anybody to track her? Was there something in her phone that could have led to more damning evidence? What was going through Ahyoung's head at the time, we really do not know, but there are messages right until she passed away. Her and her friend messaging back and forth, her friend saying that, hey, I'm gonna be in Cambodia, and she's like, oh my god, when? And this was the last message that she ever communicated with her friend. So up till she passed away, she was communicating, she was alert and aware, it seems like. So what people think actually happened so far with all the limited information that we have is that they believe that this couple, the Chinese couple, might have really administered something to her. We don't know what it is, but because they were unlicensed, they knew that they would be in trouble by causing a negligent death. Maybe they really felt so scared at the moment that they just decided to dispose the body so that maybe they can run away from whatever consequences they thought they would have. Because they were also Chinese nationals, they might have feared that at least back in China, you could be punished up to life in prison if you were found of causing someone's death through medical reasons and you did not have any license to practice. Now, this case is very unique because the suspects are Chinese nationals, the victim is Korean, and this happened in Cambodia. So Korean fans and Korean people are very worried that the Cambodian police will take their extra time and they want purposely people to forget about it, so maybe that they can sweep this under the rug, because this was not the first time a Korean nationals have been found unalived in Cambodia under mysterious circumstances. There was also a huge case of another Korean comedian celebrity that passed away from using propofol in Cambodia, and this happened actually not too long before Ahyoung's case, so it is something that we should raise our eyebrows and see what is going on there. Now, this is a woman who lives in the village where Ahyoung's body was found. She claims that, she witnessed the investigation because it was happening in her town, and she actually dreamt about Ahyoung. She said, quote, in the dream, Ahyoung came to me asking for money. I told her no, and she left. She says her whole family also cried after hearing the story. After their dream, she also left some food and drinks near where her body was found as like an offering, thinking that maybe Ahyoung was trying to find her way back home even after she passed away. It does look like the suspect are lying about the timeline, about the wife not knowing about the whole thing. It does seem like she definitely knew about it. What are they hiding exactly? I think the only option we have is to do an autopsy and seeing seeing if there's anything in her body from the toxicology report that the Chinese couple might have illegally administered to her? Or do you think this has to do something with Ahyoung's cryptic message? Before she left to Cambodia, she says that she was having some stalker problem. Or could all this just be a coincidence? Let me know what you guys think might have happened. Things are still developing and I'll let you guys know any updates. But a lot of people do say they don't want the media to stop talking about this case because if she's forgotten, this case could be swept under the rug, especially because both sides are foreigners. If you guys are from Cambodia, if you guys are Chinese and know about what this kind of Chinese clinic that they were running, I may leave a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching and see you in my next. Ask any Korean if they know this man, Kim Kil-tae, and they will say yes. He is named as one of South Korea's most notorious criminal, even at one point having his own fan club with over 2,000 members who supposedly wanted to support him and fell in love with the criminal. And the most recent case with a similar crime as Kim, even almost a look-alike in my opinion. And a lot of people are crying out, why are these assault cases in South Korea so low when it comes to punishment? Is this why a lot of people are able to get away with it and become repeat offenders? It's so important to talk about these cases. It took a long time to make this video and push it out. So remember, just a like, sharing it, discussing it with your friends, leaving a comment down below all helps to hit the algorithm and that I know you guys want to hear more about these important cases. On March 6, 2010, a neighbor would report a strange substance found in his house water tank. They called the police and what they found was quite crazy. It was a body found at the deep bottom of the water tank, and it happened to be a missing middle school student named Lee. She has been missing for about 11 days and the water tank was not far from her home. This case really blew up in South Korea, and this man, who happened to be the suspect, Kim Kil-tae, became so notorious because he was a repeat offender. And you will be surprised of how many times he actually escaped the police and got out for these serious crimes. Kim was born in 1977 in Busan, and here's an infamous story about how he grew up to be. So apparently he was abandoned as a baby and people found him at the steps of a church. He was taken into the foster care system, and that's when his adopted father met him. He only had 2 daughters and wanted to bring him a son to his household. Kim now grew up to be an elementary school student and seemed like he was really great at sports. He seemed to be pretty outgoing and getting along with other students, but it was when he reached middle school, I guess puberty, when things really changed. Now, rather it was hormones, maybe mental illness, or something happened to him that he never spoke of. Regardless, he became this really dark kid, and his parents say that's when he really shut his mouth and didn't speak much and became a loner. Somewhere along the way in elementary school and middle school, Kim found out that he was adopted. He would frequently ask his parents questions like, where did I come from? Once he realized he was adopted. Now, as the community and his friends knew he was adopted and knew the story that Kim was found in the steps of a church and pretty much abandoned on the streets, they thought that's why his name was Kil-tae, Kil meaning the streets. So people would call him street baby, that's not your real parent. It made him seem like very weak and poor, and probably did question where he came from and his authentic self. He started to hate that name so much, he changed his name, his nickname, and told people to call him Sangtae. Kim was said to be very slim and he was really fast, and Kim was considered to be almost like top tier when it came to the sports and gym class in his school. He was now in high school. That's when it all went downhill. He didn't listen to his parents at all, never went to school, and after only 1 year he would drop out. From 1994, since he was a juvenile, he'd be arrested for theft, burglary, assault, and various other charges, and was said to have spent most of his teenage up to adulthood in prison system. So they said that until he was like in his 30s, when this big incident happened, like he didn't even know how to use a computer or a phone because that's how long he's been in prison system. Even in prison, he would get into multiple fights and would be eventually sent to a confinement punishment, then moved to a mental health facility. Now, since he'd been released prison as an adult now in 1997, things became even darker. His first arrest for assault attempt was in 1997, right as he got out, to a young girl. And of course, he was caught, sent to prison, but released in 2001. Now, only 1 month 1 month since he was released, he would go out into the streets again and do the same thing to a woman in her 30s coming back from work late at night. He kidnapped her, and this time he imprisoned her for 10 days inside of his own room. When Kim got drunk and fell into deep sleep, that is when the woman in her 30s was able to escape and call the police. And when he was caught, this time he was served 8 years in prison. Now, criminals like him have no remorse. They don't feel bad for what they did, and they actually blame the victim. So Kim said that, well, she gave me the most seductive eyes, and it was a mutual thing. She could have walked out on her own any time. Now, if this was in America, that would be maybe what, like 20, 25 years, 30 years, I don't know. But 8 years. Now, thank God she didn't pass away, but who knows what could have happened. But after 8 years, he walked out as a free man again in 2009. Now, this enraged a lot of people, the 8-year sentencing, because this is what the judge said. The judge said the victim didn't have any other injuries besides being assaulted. So, because she wasn't killed, because she wasn't like, bleeding or, arms chopped off, I don't know. That's why he only got 8 years. And basically saying that, at least at least you can walk, at least you're free now. Now it's like, okay, are you waiting for something to happen in order for laws to change instead of preventing it? And back in 2009 was not that long ago. I mean, it was still in the 2000s, and we had the technology for electric ankle bracelets like we do now for assault criminal cases. If he was released, why wasn't he notified to the entire community or had a tracking system? All of the victims from Kim's story is literally someone that he was never related to. He just snatched them from the streets. So that is even more dangerous. I do have to point, one of the reasons for a lesser sentencing in crimes like this in South Korea is that they believe in the re-education system. So they absolutely believe that a criminal can be rehabilitated, educated, and sent back out to live a better, far life. And I actually do like that mindset, right? To not give up on an individual and try to educate them and try to change them and fix them and put them out on the streets again, hoping for a better life. I think that is a very positive thing. But in cases like this, what are we going to do about offenders that can't be rehabilitated, that can't be fixed? During his rebellious stages, Kim would cut off most of his contact with his family and his sisters, and he really didn't have much friends. So there was not a lot of people that really knew him, that talked to him, knew what was going inside of his head. Again, he kept himself as a big loner. Now, going back, he was released from prison in 2009 and just set him free for him to roam around. Now, he did try to get back on his feet by going and trying to get jobs. He did get a job at a container site. We don't know if he was fired or left his job, but about a month since he kept his container job, he told his coworker, hey, I'm gonna be back, so keep some of my belongings. The belongings that he kept with his friends was really interesting because one of the things that he kept was like a diary that looked like it belonged to a kid. I mean, this is a 33-year-old man, and he didn't even have that much belongings. This is like what he had at the time. A few months since his release in 2009 and leaving his job, he would go out to the streets again and act upon his urges again, this time to a woman in her 20s, and he assaulted her, but he ended up fleeing when the police were looking for him. In this case, the victim claims that she pleaded with Kim, saying that she will never report it to anybody if he just lets her go, and he did. So you could see, at least in the pattern of his cases, he does release the victims after these horrific crimes. So the woman did obviously end up reporting him to the police, and now Kim was wanted again. Now, Kim was back in Busan, and where he lived at, apparently there were a lot of empty vacant houses in apartments, in these villas. And in Korea, there's something called the 옥탑방, which is like a room you could rent out that is at the top of the villa. This was already in a very low-income household community, and 옥탑방s are said to be very low and affordable just because in the summer it gets really hot and in the winter it gets really cold. I guess in this low-income household, there was a lot of empty villas, and Kim would be literally just sneaking in and being a squatter in a lot of these 옥탑방s. And because the rooms are at the roof of the villas, a lot of people don't come and check up on it. It's just empty. Literally, people can be living there for months and you wouldn't notice until you go there and check. Kim would eventually hop around and found this one empty room in this villa. And later we will find out that this was a room right next to the murdered victim, Lee. When Kim was being a squatter in this villa, apparently he would stalk the family that lived right next door, and he realized that there was a young girl living there, a 13-year-old middle school student named Lee. He knew the patterns of when the parents were there and when they weren't, so Kim wasn't someone that was stupid. This guy was pretty smart in my opinion. Like, criminals are not stupid, you guys. They know how to stalk, they know how to measure time and when to do things and when to act upon things. On February 26th, Lee came home from school and she talked to her parents at around 7 p.m. And because her parents were working out till very late at night, she just had to wait for her older brother, who was set to come about 9 p.m. When Lee's older brother finally came home at 9 p.m., he saw that his little sister wasn't there. Now, the very strange thing was Lee was almost blind in her left eye, so she really needed her glasses. But she left her glasses, wallet, phone, everything inside, and just herself was missing. Her parents knew that this was definitely not the behavior of Lee, and they decided to report her missing to the police. Kim never really went into exact details about what he did, but based on the evidences and a little pieces of what he said later on in the interrogation, we do know what happened to little girl Lee. Till this day, Kim claims that, when he gets drunk, he blacks out and he doesn't remember anything. On February 26th, Kim entered the house of Lee through the bathroom. Again, this was a very old villa, a low-income household, and apparently the bathroom was kind of linked to the outside. So they believe that is how Kim entered, especially after measuring that Lee's parents weren't there. Kim then threatened her to not make a noise and kidnapped her to a nearby empty room. In this empty villa room, that is where Kim would assault Lee. And obviously, because she was trying to run away and make noises, that is when Kim ended her life by strangulation. And then apparently Kim just casually fell asleep. And then the next day, somehow undetected, Kim would bring the body of Lee up to this water tank that was nearby, put the body in there, and somehow somewhere gathered bricks and concrete powders, poured it in, got a plastic bag, put all her belongings that she had with her, put it inside the water tank, and closed the lid. Where did you get the bricks and the concrete powders? I mean, this was completely predetermined in our opinion. As the police were looking for this little girl within the 11 days, they were going around different houses in that location, and they found evidence of somebody squatting in these empty villas, such as somebody eating ramen, somebody sleeping there with like old mattresses and things like that when it was not rented out. And they found fingerprints in one of the liquor bottles that was found inside of an empty villa, and it matched the fingerprint of notorious Kim. So once they got a match of the fingerprints, they knew that Kim was most possibly the suspect. And within the 11 days, police actually say that they were confident that they were going to find the girl alive, because Kim, at least he never murdered anybody. He always let his victims go. So they were confident until March 6th when the girl was found dead. Now, this is the infamous wanted poster that a lot of people have seen. And by this time, the police was seeking public help to try and catch him. A criminal psychologist came up with a really great plan. Because Kim had never used a computer or phones before, it was unlikely that he was going to travel far, and he was most likely to stay in a place that he was very comfortable with. They also said, well, this guy has to eat, right? And asked restaurants and marketplaces if any of food goes missing to alert the police. And yes, indeed, a restaurant reported saying that overnight somebody came, cracked their restaurant open, and stole some food. And even the garbage, it seemed like somebody went through it. So they now knew and were confident that Kim was somewhere nearby where the incident happened. Police trimmed down to where a lot of vacant villa rooms were, and they were actually going around one by one to see if anybody was living there. And on March 10th, finally, a police would open the door to a rooftop vacant villa room and actually found him sleeping there. And he literally woke up and fought the police and ran again. Remember, Kim was said to be a very fast athlete. Or at least when he was in middle school and high school, he was a really fast guy, and he was using that, to get away from the police. And apparently this scene was like in the movies where he was like Spider-Man jumping from roof to roof, and the police were trying to catch him, and he literally came down one of the villas with the two walls like this with his hands and tried to flee as he got down. There were more policemen on the ground, and he tried to fight them, but eventually eventually he did end up losing and he was arrested. He did have some belongings with him, although he was homeless, and one of the gloves that was really eerie and creepy that they found was this like pink glove that was for about ages 9 to 10. So who did these gloves belong to? Is it one of Kim's unidentified victim, or is it something that he found on the streets just to keep it as a souvenir? I don't know. This guy is pretty smart. When he was caught, Kim would say nothing and just claim that he was drunk and he doesn't remember anything. Eventually, he was really pressured and then said, well, I did assault her. Well, I did see her, but I didn't kill her. I personally let her go after a couple hours. I didn't do that. Finally, the police were able to get DNA evidence and fingerprint evidence from the plastic bag that was found inside of the water tank, and they had enough evidence. And that is when Kim said, oh, well, I blacked out. I blacked out from alcohol. The next thing I remember is the girl was laying next to me and I decided to end her life. And then I blacked out again. And then the next thing I remember is that I was walking myself to the water tank. Really interesting how criminals are able to like nitpick their memories, what they want to remember and what they don't. In the end, Kim never showed any remorse or any apology. And apparently in the interrogations, he had the audacity to ask for cigarettes, ask for what he wanted to eat during the interrogation. And criminals like him just have this cockiness and ego that they just cannot break down. And criminal psychologists who actually met and interrogated Kim says that he was just like the photos and the videos that you see him online. Quote, he was trying to hide his true self. He had a mean eye stare. He was very aggressive and defensive, and that he was very self-conscious of what others thought of him. And one thing that a criminal psychologist did with Kim that he does with other criminals to break down their ego a little bit is to put them through the lie detector test. Not to see if they're lying because they already know he did it, but they want the criminals to see exactly that we can see that they're lying, that his lies are not invisible, that his lies, that his aggressiveness, he can't hide. The sick thing is when Kim was caught, there was even a fan club, and apparently over 2,000 people joined this fan club. And in some of the forums, they wrote, I love you, Kim. Kim, fighting, rooting for you. Let's buy him delicious food in prison, and somehow became this internet infamous sensation due to his crimes. On June 2010, the court found him guilty and sentenced him to death. But of course, he appealed. And in the appeal trials, the judges actually lessened his sentence, saying life in prison. Why did the judges lower his sentencing? And apparently one of the reasons that was written was this: that Kim excused his upbringing, saying that, well, you know, I was made fun of because I was found on the streets, that I didn't know my identity, my authentic self, because I was adopted, and I was questioning my existence. And because of that, the judges said, well, because of his upbringing, it could have made him the person he is today, and that's why they lessened his sentencing. And this comes with so much controversy, just like the Cho Do-sun case. And everybody in Korea knows this guy, and I covered the case before. And after his horrific crimes, he was released after 12 years. He was literally released after 12 years after what he has done. And it's like, why is the South Korean court being so lenient to these criminals? And a similar case rocked South Korea recently, and I'm telling you, this guy kind of looks like him. On August 17th of 2023 in Sinmin-dong of South Korea, a 30-year-old man named Chae Yun-chung would walk around in the early mornings between 9 to 10 a.m. nearby his house, nearby the park, and literally he was fishing for a victim. Now Choi was said to be a big loner as well. Apparently he says that he never had a girlfriend, he never had any relationships, he didn't have a job, he couldn't keep a job, and he was just inside of his room doing games all day and all night. And in the mornings, he went out to the park and he found a victim in her 30s who was a teacher on her way to school. He would take her to an isolated area in the park, assaulted her, then he even had a knuckle weapon and ended her life. When police found him, this guy even searched up the infamous high kick case. You guys know what happened to that case, right? I also covered this case. This is one of the most infamous high kick assault cases that also ended up going to trial, and this guy only received 20 years. It's also a big thing. Choi researched multiple cases like this and copied them. Now, when Choi was arrested, you could see him literally saying whoa to like a lot of the cameras that he was seeing. A little bit of smiles and and just this, again, that same cockiness, that same ego trip that like he just can't come down from. And in the trials, the witnesses say that Choi was laying back with his legs crossed, hands back, leaning, sometimes even singing, sighing whenever the defendant was giving the information of what he did, and even laughed during the courts and got frustrated at the victim's family and the judges. I'm sorry, but this is literally a loser of a loser. No job, playing games all day, can't get a girlfriend. After a horrific crime, they have to defend their ego. Because of all these outrages, there's also another case recently of a very infamous criminal relating to assault victims, and he was said to have up to 11 victims, and he was only sentenced to 15 years in prison, and he's actually due to be released, and they did find one other criminal case that he could be related to, and because of that, he is staying in prison for now. Now, I do have to say, first of all, South Korea is a very, very safe country compared to other places, but when rare cases like this happen in South Korea, it is so lenient that these reoffenders reoffend because they know they will be released from prison not long after. So I thought it was very important to talk about today's cases so that we can also have a positive change and a more serious laws for these offenders. What are the laws in your country? Leave a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in my next video. Should you be punished for not helping someone in need? Your judgment to not help someone who might need medical attention, should that lead you to legal punishment? The duty to rescue, or the Good Samaritan Law, has been a hot debate for years. Today's case dives into an unusual behavior of a man and his coworker. Or are they more than just coworkers? What happened between the 4 hours of Miss Yoon's life is a mystery, but the ultimate question is, should you be criminalized for not helping someone who needed medical rescue? Or was there more to Miss Yoon's death, someone else causing her negligence? This is a very interesting topic because actually in most countries around the world, you might have the moral duty to try and rescue someone or call someone for help if you do see someone that is in need of rescue, such as a medical attention, life and death. But just because you don't, you can't actually be criminally penalized. But in some countries, you can be. Apparently in Germany, France, Swiss, Netherlands, so I guess in a lot of European countries, it states that if you fail to provide help to someone who is in need of rescue, such as calling for help, 911, I guess in extreme cases, you can get punishment. Some countries, jail time and fine. And I'm thinking that this is more like in extreme cases. But this has been very controversial because in the past, many times, when you had the good heart, such as you wanted to help someone who might have passed out, who might have had a medical emergency, and let's say you accidentally lift their head or you accidentally touch them in a way where you shouldn't have, that could have also caused them to pass away. You can be actually charged by the family or be sued for wrongful death. And now, while you were just trying to help, the burden is on you. So there are a lot of times when people don't want to get involved. Or in other cases, let's say you're on the subway, this has happened in real life many times, and you saw someone getting abused, be hit. Morally, it might be nice for you to intervene and help, but you being a bystander, by doing nothing, should you be really criminally penalized by the law, such as going to jail or be fined couple $1,000 just because you didn't do anything for a stranger? Because everybody does have a different way of handling certain extreme situations. I mean, there were many times when I was a bystander, especially if you're in the city or it's busy. If you do see something, a lot of the times you just walk by. You think someone else will help. There was a recent case in America that did cause an outrage. There was a lady who needed medical emergency. She was 60 years old. She went to the hospital. I believe she did not have insurance, and they did check on her, and they claimed that they didn't find anything wrong with her, although she felt sick. She couldn't breathe, she says. And again, because she didn't have insurance or way to pay, they did release her, and they did call the cops because she was not leaving. Now, who knows if they really did not find anything in the basic checkups and cleared her. Maybe if she stayed a little longer, they could have found something. Or maybe they were negligent and they actually did not check up on her thoroughly, and because they knew that she wasn't going to have any source to pay the hospitals, they just released her. Now, the officers that got there ended up arresting this lady that was bounded to a wheelchair because they also thought that she was just kind of making a scene. They didn't believe that she couldn't breathe. So they arrested her, put them in like the back of their truck, a police truck. They came back a couple minutes or couple hours later and they found her deceased. Now, I believe they were trying to have the officers that was involved charged with murder, basically saying that because of the negligence, it led to her death, and that this was morally absolutely wrong. Lady, Miss Lisa, she was confirmed to have had a stroke, which was the cause of death, meaning that the actual officers, they did not touch her or like hit her, that led to her death. So it was a natural cause. But again, this was very controversial because they literally did not listen to her. They literally left someone that was in need of help. They arrested her and treated her so poorly, and she was found deceased in their car, in their vehicle. Technically, this did fall into like a Samaritan Law and the moral issues of helping someone that's in need. Should you be criminalized for something like this? Again, is a hot topic. So today's case also involves a similar story in South Korea. This case has blown up and has millions of views, and I thought this would be an interesting story to share with you guys because it's still a mystery of what happened to Miss Yoon. Everyone's gonna have different opinions, so let's just respect each other. But a lot of you guys did comment that you want to see outfits of the day like I used to do. I used to kind of showcase what I'm wearing for the video, but some people didn't like that because it was true crime and mystery videos. You guys know I'm really into fashion. I upload whatever I'm wearing on my Instagram, and I did attend New York Fashion Week a couple of days ago, and this is an outfit that I was wearing from there. One August night of 2019, husband Mr. Kim tried to reach his wife Seo Jung-yoon, or Miss Yoon. She was 44 years old. She wasn't picking up her phone. It was kind of getting late at night. She's also a mother. You know, in Asian countries, especially Korea, it's like if you're a mother, you should be coming home by like 8 p.m., getting dinner for your family. And apparently, Kim got so worried that day, he called her 31 times, including her children as well. They were teenagers and were trying to reach her all night. In the morning of August 17th, Mr. Kim would get a call from the hospital, and he was alerted that his wife came into the ER that morning, but came in passed away. There's a voice recording, and you can hear in his voice he is so shocked that one day you wake up and your wife is no longer here.
남편분이시라고요?
네네.
말씀드리기가 어려운데 일단 아셔야 돼서 말씀을 드리는데 저는 응급실에 있는 의사고요.
네.
님 지금 아침에 오셨는데
네.
돌아가신 상태로
네?
오셨어요.
네? 뭐라고요?
Now, according to the records, it shows that she was found in the backseat of her own car at 6:40 a.m. She was brought into the ER actually by her male coworker. The first thing was that the nurses did find it odd that she actually had no undergarments on. She had her jeans and her black shirt on, but they did notice that she had no bra on and no undergarments. And it was later when police actually said that they found her undergarments inside of a plastic bag inside of her own purse, which is really odd. In the autopsy, no drugs were found in her system. There were a few bruises in her body, but no external damage was found that led to her death. Actually, the cause of death was cerebral hemorrhage, something that happened inside of her own body, meaning they found it most likely that this was an internal damage, usually due to high blood pressure. So interesting, there was no external force, meaning she didn't hit her head somewhere or somebody else hit her. Miss Yoon's husband, Kim, now he claims that she did not have any health issues. She was healthy. She was a healthy 44-year-old. She was not getting any treatments or medications for high blood pressure, and if anything happened, they didn't know about it. Especially having a cerebral hemorrhage at 44 years old for someone that's healthy, it's really unlikely, but I guess, you know, it does happen. So the person, of course, in question was Miss Yoon's coworker, the last person to see Miss Yoon alive, and his name was Mr. Jo. Joe. Joe has been her coworker at the same company for about 10 years. I believe he was in his late 40s or early 50s. And in the beginning, he first claimed that he called Miss Yoon at 6:15 a.m. in the morning and she didn't pick up. And when he went to go and try to find her, he randomly found her car at the parking lot of their own office building. He looked through the windows and he saw her passed out, so he called for help. Of course, come to find out after doing some more digging, Joe was the last person to see Miss Yoon alive, and they were together about 11 hours since she has passed. The true story was that the night before, Miss Yoon and Joe decided to have dinner together, and apparently they were drinking a little bit, and he claimed at first that there was some more work stuff to talk about, and also because they were near Joe's apartment, Yoon wanted to use the bathroom. The elevator camera showed that around 10 p.m. she's seen in the elevator going up to his apartment. The next thing that the camera catches, and this is the CCTV footage that people are baffled about, is around 2 a.m. where Joe is seen dragging Miss Yoon, where it seems like she doesn't have any consciousness. She's barefoot. And he's like doing this little hug motion, trying to keep her head up. And at one point, he couldn't even hold her weight, so he even falls on top of her. Then he is seen driving Miss Yoon's car and parking it around the parking lot's entrance door and tries to put her in the back of the seats. Then he is seen putting her halfway into the car and goes to the driver's seats and drives a little bit, like trying to position the car so he can try to put her inside of the car. Or nobody actually really knows why he was doing this or what his plans were. Later, we'll come to find out that he actually did not even put Miss Yoon into the actual passenger back seat. He actually put her into the footrest area of the passenger seat. So the area where there's like the footrest and then like a bump, very uncomfortable and an odd place to put someone there. But of course, later we'll find out that there might be a reason why he wanted to do this. Maybe he wanted to conceal a body, or so that nobody looked into the windows to see somebody inside of the car. And then he drives the car to the parking lot of their office, and that's where he claims that he found her in the beginning of the investigation. Police, the family, could not understand after watching these CCTV footages what was going inside Joe's head and why was Miss Yoon found unconscious at her coworker's apartment. Nothing really made sense. And this is where Joe's story enters. And his side of the story is the only version we have because Miss Yoon is no longer here. Now, Joe claims till this day, throughout the whole court case, that he himself and Miss Yoon were just friends. Again, he claimed that they had dinner, that they were talking, they had more work stuff to talk about, and again, later with the bathroom story, she wanted to use bathroom at 10 p.m. at night. Now, he claims that he was supposed to go to another town, to Seoul, because that's where I believe his wife was living, and I guess because of work, he was going back and forth from his own wife's place to his apartment where his work was. So he needed to go back home, pack up, and then leave again. That's why he went back to his apartment after dinner with Yoon. Joe claims that innocently, she just went up to use the bathroom right away, and she wasn't coming out after a couple minutes. It turned to about an hour, and he went to go and check up on her. Now, he claims that he opened his bathroom door about an inch and asked her, "Are you okay?" And he said that he saw Miss Yoon vomiting everywhere. She was on the toilet. She did say, "Yes, I'm okay," but because she and him have been drinking the whole night, it seemed like she was really out of it. Like she was just almost blacked out or passed out. And because him and Miss Yoon has been drinking with dinner, he thought that maybe she just got really drunk really fast. He claimed that he heard Miss Yoon say, "Yes, I'm okay," and he left her alone. I mean, again, this is a man who has to go up to Seoul. Like, he has to go back to his wife's place where he has his own kid. You have this lady, your coworker, drunk at your bathroom. It's like, come on. Like, I have to go soon. Like, it's getting pretty late. Then he claims that he came back a while later. I don't know exactly what time, but she wasn't coming out of the bathroom. So he went to check up on her again. And this time he claims that her clothes were off. Like, just randomly, she took her clothes off and she was leaning against the wall as if she passed out. He claims that there was vomit all over her undergarments. So he decided to take them off and wash off her vomit off for her while she was passed out. Very odd. This is your coworker. She has vomit all over her body and you just decide to clean up for her, like being the nice guy. We'll get to more details in a bit, but the prosecutors decided to charge him with an interesting charge. I believe it was somewhere between negligence and murder. So they were trying to argue that he had the duty to save someone who was in danger, but he didn't. So they didn't actually find evidence that directly stated that Joe caused Yoon's death, meaning he hit her or did anything with her that led to her passing, because again, autopsies showed that this was a cerebral hemorrhage, most likely due to her internal problems, but that there was a chance that she could have survived if he got her medical attention, but he didn't. And that's what the prosecutors were trying to argue. He could have helped her and missed the golden timing, which had led to her death. So technically negligence. Now it's hard to think why Mr. Joe or anyone in that position, if someone acted that way, why you wouldn't have gotten help, right? I mean, you left your coworker, your side lover, secret, whatever it might have been. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, this was someone that you knew that was in your house, in your presence, and you just like are holding her dead weight and just transferring her to her own back seat, not even in the passenger seats, like in the footrest area. There's actually CCTV footage at 10 p.m. I showed you guys of her going up to his house, and she looks pretty fine. She doesn't look drunk. She's looking at her phone. Like, she's not like trying to fall down or anything. It doesn't seem like she's that drunk at all. Now, the trial was really interesting because Joe claimed some statements that nobody seems to believe. Now, of course, one of the biggest questions that the prosecutors and the judges had was, why didn't you bring her to the hospital if she was that gone, that passed out? He said, I still didn't think to bring her to the hospital. He claims that he brought her out of the bathroom after washing her in the garments, and he went back to his bathroom to wash his own bathroom to clean up the vomits. He says that after cleaning his bathroom, he came out and heard her snore. So I thought she was sleeping, he said. Now, some of the experts did say that this does match with people who do go through brain hemorrhage. It indeed may make the victim or patient look like they're in a deep sleep, even making certain noises like light snoring. Throughout the trial, the prosecutors did argue that it seemed like both of them were in a sexual relationship or inappropriate relationship because they both were married and, you know, their wives and the husbands did not know. And there were apparently different incidents when Miss Yoon would come to Mr. Joe's house, and that there were times that she actually used the stairs to go all the way up to the 19th floor and not the elevator so that she doesn't get caught. So it does seem like they did have an inappropriate relationship, although throughout the whole trial, Joe claimed that they were just friends. Now, this could be various reasons. Obviously, if he was an actual lover or they were cheating each other, even more lawsuits against each other's families, because in South Korea, if you're married and your spouse cheats on you, you can actually sue the person that your spouse cheated with. And of course, admitting that you had some kind of inappropriate relationships, it could put more burden on him. Now, there are obviously statements that doesn't make sense. Now, remember, Joe claimed that he only opened the bathroom door about 1 inch. Police claim that if you only open about 1 inch, you can't even see the victim sitting on the toilet as he described. And here is an image of what his bathroom looked like. So they were claiming that he must have opened the door wider and actually saw what she was doing instead of 1 little inch. I mean, these are little details that the police will nitpick to see if you're telling the truth or not. When asked why he dragged Miss Yoon outside into her car, he claims that he thought it would be the best place for her to sleep outside of his place and get some fresh air so that she would sober up. Also, it's shady and doesn't make sense because if you wanted her to sober up and get some fresh air, why would you put her in a crammed car footrest? And one of the biggest influence of the outcome of the judgment was to determine if Miss Yoon was alive at this point or not, and if Joe knew if she was alive at that point or not. Experts cannot 100% for sure say that she was alive and breathing at that point or passed away, but experts did say that most likely she could have been breathing at that point. And ultimately, if they did call for help at that moment at 2 a.m., she could have survived, but nobody can for sure 100% say that this could have been the case. But in the side, in my little personal opinion, I honestly think that Joe thought that she probably passed away. If you knew that she was alive and if you cared for her, you would at least make her be comfortable and have a chance of not suffocating to her death. and dragging her like she was dead weight. Did he think that his wife was gonna come to his apartment and check up on her, so he wanted to just get rid of her, or what? Now, the biggest evidence was trying to figure out and go through Miss Yoon's phone records. Now, in the CCTV at around 10 a.m., you can see her using her phone, and in the forensic records of her phone, it shows that she was active. She was texting her family, even talking to her daughter right before she went up to his house. And the records show that she actually stopped using her phone at around 10:28 p.m. Her daughter called her around 10:37 and 10:55, but she did not pick up. Around 10:57, her phone records show that she was using her phone again. And remember, Joe testified that around 11 p.m. was when he went to go check on her in the bathroom, and she was vomiting and she was like almost passed out. But there were records that somebody was using her phone after 11 p.m. So it showed that somewhere between 11 to 11:27 p.m. somebody was using her phone, and 11:27 she actually went into her search engine and was trying to search for something. Very interesting. They were trying to determine if this was her using her phone or not. Now, the forensic records, they did show patterns of how she used her phone. So she would go to an app, go to her home screen, then go to another app, and that was just like her pattern of how she used her phone. In the records of somebody using her phone from 11 p.m. to 11:27, this was the same pattern that they saw. So they believe that most likely it was her still using her phone. Like, I think everybody goes to their home screen and changes the app. So I don't know how reliable that can be, but it's also crazy because this part of the record shows that somebody called her and she purposely did not pick up, but her phone was in her hand, or somebody had her phone in her hand and she rather flipped the phone when somebody was calling. I believe Android, that makes your phone automatically go into vibration mode, or if you turn the volume down. So even all of that is recorded in your phone. So if Miss Yoon was knocked out around 11 p.m., that means somebody else was using her phone after that. Or could Joe's story be not true? That Yoon actually was not passed out, she was not in the bathroom vomiting, and she was just using her phone. But at 12 a.m., records show that Joe called his wife, who was in Seoul, saying that he most likely could not come home that day. Which means between that 30-minute window, something had to happen to Miss Yoon that made Mr. Joe say, hey, I can't come home, this might be an emergency. Something serious enough where he knew that he was not going to go back home to his own wife. She also had a fitness app downloaded on her phone, and this data showed anytime your phone would move. The sensors indicated that the phone was also moving at 12:33 a.m. to 1:48 a.m. This should have been the time that she had passed out. So this is a mystery. Was it Miss Yoon that was holding her phone and just taking it around, or was it somebody else touching her phone? If so, why? Why did somebody else have her phone? After he dropped her car off at the parking lot at sometime around 5 a.m., it is shown that he is walking around the area where the car was dropped off, and he would take photos. Apparently, nobody knows what photos was taken because he deleted the photos, but the phone records show that he was using his camera app taking photos. And hours later, he does return home before he takes her to the ER. Interesting thing that the experts point out is that he had a black backpack with him. Now, in the first CCTV footage at around 2 a.m., the backpack was pretty full. Like, it is full to the brim. Like, nobody knows what was inside of his bag. But in the morning, when he came back home, you could see that the backpack is a little bit deflated, like he took out something. Till this day, nobody knows what he took out, what was inside of the bag, and why he even took a bag with him when this was like an emergency situation. And what would he need to discard? Maybe it was something that belonged to her. The judges ultimately ruled that they did not find him guilty of murder or even negligence. They all did agree that what he did was really odd and not morally right what he did, but claims that no one knew for sure if she had passed away at the time from the elevator to the car. Because if she has been already passed away from the elevator to the car, it means that there's also no laws to say that you need to call help for someone who's already deceased. and passed away. Also in Korea, it does state that you do have the duty to help, but you can't be punished for not helping someone who's in need of medical attention. People argue that if you are criminalized for not helping, it goes against free will. And to create wrongful suspects, again, putting the burden on somebody for not helping, or maybe a wrongful death by you accidentally causing someone's death. There was also just not enough information to say that Joe caused the actual death of Yoon. Again, autopsy ruled that most likely this was due to high blood pressure, although again, the family say that they had no idea she had high blood pressure, and if it was a thing, it was undiagnosed. But it's like, how unlucky can you be? Like, what are the odd chances that you randomly have this underlying whatever problem that you might be that was undiagnosed? You're at your coworker's apartment at night. I mean, maybe they were fooling around. A very, very, very strong activity. I mean, that just caused her to, you know, pass away. But what are the chances of just being so unlucky in that moment? You know, like everything just falling into that place. In the CCTV, it also shows that Joe actually was the one who got her undergarments inside of the plastic bag and gave it to the ER. But at the end of the day, Yoon's husband also argues that even if they had an inappropriate relationship, what was going through Joe's mind to not call for help? At least he could have done something about it. I mean, cheating on your husband or your wife is the second thing. Somebody's life is in danger. And even if they might have passed away, why would you dispose the body yourself for someone who didn't have criminal records in his background? So what happened? What is this theory? Number one theory could be that, I mean, maybe Joe did have something to do with Yoon's death. Maybe he did do something to her, but it was just not caught on the autopsy. So number two, it could be that, again, having an inappropriate relationship, he was just so scared at that moment that he might be caught cheating. It might ruin his own family with his wife. He didn't want her to know. He probably just wanted to conceal her body and have somebody else find her. And I don't think he realized that what he did by not calling for help, not doing this and that, could have led him to even more trouble and more suspicions and more mystery. At the end of the day, Joe was found not guilty and he is a free man. Now, I believe before the court, he did try to end his own life, and he even left a note, a goodbye letter to his families, to his coworkers, saying that he felt burdened by what happened. He fell down the 5 stories but did survive, just had some fractures. Now again, this case caused a big debate between should you be penalized, criminalized for not helping somebody who needed the medical attention. In my personal opinion, I think in extreme cases like this, I think he did deserve some kind of penalty or some kind of criminalization, because this is a whole different case than just watching a bystander, a stranger. This person was inside of your house. You don't know if she's actually passed or not, and you're dragging her body like that. That could have actually caused the death of her. So should you be penalized for your poor judgment? I say in extreme cases, yes. What do you guys think actually happened in this case? What are the laws in your country when it comes to Good Samaritan Law? And do you think there's more to the story of what actually happened to Miss Yoon? Would love to know your opinions in the comments down below. If you found this story to be interesting and something we need to learn, remember to share, hit the like button, which helps so much, and thank you so much to Harry's, and see you on my next video. This is another case from the town of Itaewon in South Korea. Today, Itaewon is known as a hip foreign town, but the image of the foreigners' towns have really changed since the 90s and early 2000s. Unfortunately, today's case is another infamous case that has been forgotten. 2 American exchange students in Korea for a fun and educational time of their life. One murdered and one a pointed suspect. But is she the suspect? The suspect of this brutal crime is still somewhere out there and living among us. So by now, you guys probably have heard of the town Itaewon in South Korea. But before that, and still today it is, Itaewon is known as a very hip foreigners town. You can get American food and various ethnic foods that you can't get anywhere else in South Korea. Korea is not a vegan country, but in Itaewon you can find a lot of vegan stores. But did you know that back in the 90s and 2000s, Itaewon did have a very bad image, and it was known to be one of the dangerous ghetto towns town that was known to Koreans. Now, this was because there was a US military base in Yongsan, which is right next to Itaewon. I believe the US military did move out of Yongsan, so it's no longer there, but up till only a couple years ago, Yongsan did have a military base, and because of that, Itaewon was known to be a hot place for military soldiers. So that's kind of where the foreign town trend started. But because it was known as a foreign town to South Koreans, there was an image that foreigners were wild, that they cause a lot of troubles, that they're loud, just a really bad stereotype of foreigners in this town. And you guys probably know the infamous Itaewon case where the suspect Arthur Patterson and his friend was suspected of murdering a Korean man back in, I believe, the 90s. And Arthur Patterson was found guilty over 20 years later and was extradited to Korea and sentenced to over 20 years in jail. Today's case also happened in Itaewon in 2001, not as famous as Arthur Patterson's case. It's been kind of buried, so I wanted to bring this case back to light. Mr. Tom Barnes that I've interviewed, he was a CID officer in South Korea, now retired. He emailed me about this case that he's worked on. And because Arthur Patterson has been found over 20 years later, I believe by talking about this case, we can have high hopes one day finding the suspect even 20 years later. So big thank you to Mr. Barnes for letting me know about this case. And remember, if you like these hidden cases or cases that are buried that needs to be brought back to light, hit the like button, share this video. Remember, the suspect is somewhere out there. We can put all our energy and put it out into the universe, hoping that we can also help bring this case back to justice. So back in 2001, there was a motel named K Motel somewhere in the town of Itaewon. Now, this was an old building, an old motel, and apparently this was kind of like how Itaewon was and still is. If you go to certain places in Itaewon, it's very old buildings. And again, Itaewon was not like a new hip town yet. People also say in the 90s and early 2000s, there was a lot of red rooms. And because there were a lot of foreigners, there was also a lot of drug dealings that went on in Itaewon. So there was a group of female exchange students that came from all over the world. They were studying at a university somewhere about 120 miles away from Seoul. Now, there was a friend group of 7 females that decided that, hey, it's almost St. Patrick's Day. Let's go all the way up to Seoul and see what Seoul is all about. We're in South Korea. Let's spend the weekend there. Now, this particular weekend was a St. Patrick's weekend. Obviously, St. Patrick's Day is celebrated in America, not in Korea, but because it's a foreigners' town, that's where you'll go to have like Halloween parties, Thanksgiving parties, St. Patrick's Day. It was a night of drinking, having fun, and they say that it was pretty crowded again because of the holiday weekend. And the girls even say that they flirted with some military sergeants that they met at particular bars. And one of the girls from the friend group, Kenzie, says that her friend Jamie, she even saw her kiss one of the boys during this dance party. Jamie Lynn Pench was a 19-year-old American exchange student from Pennsylvania, and Kenzie was a 19-year-old exchange student from West Virginia. Now, Jamie and Kenzie were kind of like the buddies for the night. They were hanging out together, of course, with other friend groups, but the other girls decided to go home early because they were tired. They had a lot to drink, and Jamie and Kenzie stayed a little bit longer and decided to drink a little more. Now, according to Kenzie, as she was hanging out with Jamie and these military men, the military men asked the girls, Jamie and Kenzie, if they would like to stay and go to another bar. But Kenzie says that she declined because they were tired and decided to go home.
She started talking to a guy named Vince.
Guess you could tell he was lonely because it didn't take him long for him to invite me down to, there's an island south of Korea, Jeju. And he's like, you just have to spend the night with me. Jamie and I were dancing with some guys. They were all gonna go over to a club called Stompers. And so these guys asked us to go and we declined. That was when Jamie and I decided to leave.
And to circle back, the girls, the 7 girls, were staying at the K Motel that I talked about. Now, both the girls weren't heavily drunk. They were very tipsy. Later on, we will find evidence that they drank up till about 0.11% blood alcohol level. Alcohol does affect person to person differently, but 0.11 at least wasn't like crazy drunk. It was about tipsy, making you feel good, but you weren't totally out of it. Now, Kenzie and Jamie finally arrived at the motel, and according to Kenzie, who was the last person to see Jamie alive, says that she followed Jamie to her room 103 to make sure that she was okay. According to Kenzie, Jamie said that she wanted to take a shower before she went to sleep to sober up, and as they went inside Jamie's room, Jamie said, "Shh, Anna is sleeping, I have to be quiet. So Jamie did have a roommate of the day, which was Anna. So Jamie and Anna was staying at room 103. Kenzie was staying at a different room but wanted to drop her friend off. So really important, Jamie's roommate Anna was sleeping and was inside their motel room at the time. Now I cannot find exactly what time they came back, but it is said that they came in sometime between 1 to 4 a.m. Now here is a map of how these motel rooms look like. This was a old cheap motel, you guys. This is almost like a one room. So it did have a bathroom right here, right as you walk in, and right as you walk in, you see the bed. So this is a small, tiny room. Walls are thin, you could hear everything. It's a small one room. I mean, probably even a little claustrophobic for two people. Now, according to Kenzie, the last memory that she has of Jamie, she was about to take a shower. Also, to remind you, these old motels, their security was like 0. Then she says that she went back to her room because she knew that her friend was fine. She was gonna take a shower. An interesting thing, Kenzie says that when she went back to her room, which she was staying with her boyfriend at the time, which was, I believe, on the same floor, so not too far away. She says that she was about to go to sleep and decided to check up on Jamie one more time, which is interesting. Like, you both are kind of drunk. Like, you know, your friend went into the room safely, but she decided to go and check up on her again. So a couple minutes later, according to Kenzie, she says that she went back to room 103. She opened the door, so I guess they didn't lock it. And she says that she heard someone taking a shower and assumed that it was Jamie. She finally knew that everything was okay and decided to fall asleep and woke up the next day. So now the morning of March 18th, 2001, around 8 a.m. in room 103, Anna, Jamie's roommate, would wake up and says that she screamed because she saw a woman lying on the floor unconscious. She could not confirm that this was her roommate Jamie because there was like a black jacket on top of this person's face. Anna says that she went out to get the other girls, frantic, and went downstairs to ask the front desk lady to help call the police. The front lady told them where the police was. They ran to the police station, the nearest that they can find, alerted them, and police came to the motel around 8:30 a.m. When police entered room 103, the woman was found completely clothless. There was blood everywhere, and again, a black jacket that was covering the face. Her undergarments were left, some in the bathroom, some outside where she was found, and what looked like some boot footprints on the ground. Police uncovered the jacket to try and see who it was, and it's very sad because they actually said that she was in such a bad condition on her face that they couldn't even identify her. So somebody had hit her, stomped on her, whatever it was, so bad that they couldn't even identify her. Friends said that if this is Jamie, she should have a United States tattoo on her back, and police did confirm that this woman did have the United States tattoo, and it was confirmed that it was Jamie. Like, you would have to have a heavy, immense power for you to do that, I'm imagining. Blood alcohol, again, was found to be 0.11. So in most countries and states, that's above the legal limit to drive. But again, according to professionals, that is not like full-on drunk at all. It's tipsy, making you feel good up to that point. Autopsy also showed that there was no evidence of defense wounds, meaning that she most likely did not see this coming or had the ability to fight back. So that could tell you something about the scenario. Maybe it was someone she knew, maybe it wasn't. But because still she was technically under the influence, that could be one of the reasons why she didn't have time to fight back. There was also no evidence of assault that was found, which is interesting. They also did a drug test and nothing came up. Now, the American CID officers, which is the Criminal Investigation Department in US military that is stationed in South Korea, did take over this case because it happened to American students. Now, they did criticize the Korean police of having a very poor job in gathering the evidence and taking care of the crime scene, because they do believe that still to this day they're unsure if the footprints, or at least some of them, was actually the police and not the suspect, because the evidence was mixed up like that. That did kind of hinder the investigation, and it could have been the suspect. Or it could have been the police, like, because later on, actually, before they were able to analyze that, the motel staff came in and cleaned the room. So that's very unfortunate. And according to the CID officers, the Korean police did gather something that could have been the suspect. They did find hair and blood samples that did not belong to Jamie or Anna. This was a type A blood, and Jamie and Anna did not have A type blood. And back in 2001, apparently in South Korea, they still did not have high DNA technology. They could only figure out the type of blood. They did have DNA testing, but it was not reliable yet. I don't know if they still have that evidence with them somewhere stashed in the compartments, but they should definitely retest that. Now, Jamie's pants was found inside of the bathroom, and her bra and socks were found outside where she was found unalive. Interesting thing is her bra and socks were wet with blood, and her feet was also wet with blood. And according to criminal profilers, by looking at the pictures, it could be a possibility that somebody had to take off her socks and garments in order for it to be bloody and left out in that state, which is also interesting because they did not find any evidence that she was assaulted. So why would the person have to take off her socks and undergarments like after the fact that they have done this? Now, there were a few witnesses, and we will get to the roommate because I'm sure you guys are curious about that. There were 2 witnesses that was outside of room 103. A motel guest and a motel staff says that they believe they saw a white male standing in front of room 103. Now, if it's room 103, I believe that's the first floor, so definitely people could have heard or seen something. And the motel staff says that she believes she saw again a pale man with blood spatters on his pants. That's all she remembers. Or maybe she did and she was kind of used to that like rowdy part of Itaewon, so she didn't think anything of it. But it gets me to think, how did this motel staff not hear anything when literally a crazy murder was going on? Like, there's no way you could stop a person like that and not hear anything, which is mind-baffling to me. Now, right next door was room 102, where one of the other girls and her boyfriend decided to stay. Now, the female student in room 102 claims that at around 4:15 a.m., she was awoken by a loud noise, especially of a man speaking in English and yelling. She also says she heard someone say, "Let's go." Does that mean that the suspect could have been 2 people and not 1? Or was the suspect talking to the victim? Female student and her boyfriend says that they did not go out to see if everything was okay because the walls were so thin that this could have came from upstairs, maybe the other next door, and not particularly 103. Now I'm thinking, did someone follow Jamie and Kenzie all the way to the motel? But remember, Kenzie says that she went back to check on Jamie, meaning that she could have seen somebody standing out there, but she never reported that. So could it even be possible that random people would find a random room 103 and attack a random person? How did they know that it was females only staying in that room? So that is definitely a mystery as well. While editing, I did think about the possibility that it could have been random strangers, since Arthur Patterson's case was about 2 boys randomly attacking a random stranger they had no relation with. So I think this case also has a possibility that it could have been someone that they did not know. Now, the crazy thing is that the witness, or should be a witness, Anna, Jamie's roommate that was sleeping inside of the room, claims that she didn't hear a thing, which is literally mind-baffling. And later on, when investigators asked her, like, how did you sleep through that? According to Anna, she says that she usually is a deep sleeper, but because she drank that day and had a party, like, she just completely knocked out and didn't hear a thing. Look, I've seen deep sleepers before. Like my brother, I know he's a deep sleeper. He sleeps through like anything. I'm a very, very light sleeper. And even if I was drunk, like, if you are having somebody literally right in front of you, this happened a foot or two from the bed that she was sleeping in. Like, I think I would wake up. Like, if somebody was literally unaliving someone, that just, I mean, can that be done in quiet? I don't know. Now, Kenzie, the last person to see Jamie alive, cooperated with the police, the CID officers, and she gave the names of the men that she hung out with that day with Jamie, the military men. And I believe one of the men that she pointed out was a guy named Vincent that she hung out with, particularly at the bar. The CID officers did take the DNA, shoe sizes, and even the lie detector test of the boys. And according to both Korean and CID officers, they cleared them. Now, police originally said that the footprint that they found next to Jamie was 270 centimeters, or about US men's shoe size 9. And it was most likely a Walker boot type. Something that, yes, the military guys wear often. Walker boots. But again, this evidence is shaky because it was tampered by the police. It could have been the police shoe print. That's again very unfortunate. Now from here, after the case, the foreign exchange students by one did go back home, and this case was left cold. And Jamie's parents back in the US were frustrated that their daughter was unalived in a foreign country on the day that she was supposed to be having fun in such a sad way, and there was no suspect. Jamie's parents asked the senator of the United States that was going to South Korea to have a meeting with the Korean president, and they were successful. The senator did plead with the Korean president to try and push this case farther. So the US investigators, including the FBI, decided to take a look at this case. Now, when they were going through all the evidence, the FBI started to look at Kenzie as suspicious. Kenzie, Jamie's friend and that party buddy of the day. And according to the Korean police and CID, originally, they even said that there was no evidence that Jamie ended up taking a shower because the bathtub and her body was dry when she was found. And police did a test to see if the water would dry within the 5-6 hours that it took for them to discover her. And in this test, they say that even 6 hours later, the water did not dry even half inside of the bathtub. So this means that Jamie actually did not end up taking a shower as Kenzie said. Now here's a photo from the bathtub. I mean, it is pretty blurry. I can't find a high definition picture of it. And FBI doubted the statement that Kenzie says that she saw Jamie take off her clothing outside before she went into the bathroom and told Kenzie that she was going to take a shower because her pants were found inside of the bathroom. So those little details was something that FBI wanted to take a look at. And one of the biggest question and doubt that they had towards Kenzie was, why did she go back to check on her friend the second time? I mean, she already saw her go in. She was fine. She was about to take a shower. I mean, you both just had a long night. I mean, you were about to lay your head on the pillow and then go check up on her. Like, they just couldn't see why she had to go back again. Like, was she just an amazing friend? I mean, I thought about it and I'm like, you know, I wouldn't have gone back either. I took her to her room, saw her take a shower. I am also tired. I'm about to lay in bed. I will probably go to sleep, is what most normal people would say, but again, different for different people. So FBI started to really point Kenzie as the suspect. In these photos, you see that Kenzie was a lot bigger than Jamie. Now, originally, it was reported that Jamie was 167 centimeters, 54 kilograms. Kenzie was about 170 centimeters and 91 kilograms. But according to this picture, she's a lot taller than Jamie than just by 3 centimeters. So, and according to Jamie's parents, a week prior to the case, Jamie told her parents that there was a girl at her school that was bothering her. There was no other details to what she referred to specifically. Was it a Korean student? Was it an American student that she was hanging out with? No details about that. With everything that they've gathered, FBI came up with the theory that Jamie and Kenzie could have been in a homosexual dynamic. Now, about a year went by and Kenzie and of course other students went back to their hometown. Kenzie was back in her school in West Virginia. And FBI contacted Kenzie back and told her, hey, we're still trying to figure this out. Would you mind helping us as a witness? So Kenzie was under the impression that she was still trying to help her friend murder be solved. And 3 FBI agents invited Kenzie to a hotel room in Virginia near where her school was, which is interesting because the FBI did not call her to the police station interrogation room where there were tapes. Nothing was filmed at all. They just called her to a hotel room. And this was a tactic that FBI used to try and get Kenzie to confess or to say more information than what she possibly could have told them. Kenzie claims that at first, the first day, the FBI was really nice. Hey, how are you? I'm checking up on you. Are you okay since that incident? How was your schoolwork? And apparently Kenzie felt really calm, that they were her friends, and she trusted them. She also says that one of the investigators even told her, "You're like my sister." The second day, she says that she even felt so comfortable that she even took ice cream to the hotel room to try and, remember what she saw and felt that day to try and get the suspect. But the second day, this is when she says that she was hammered with tough questions by the FBI pointing to her as the suspect. Kenzie says that the FBI started to show her photos and videos of the crime scene and asked her certain questions and phrased the question specifically to try and say that you are the suspect. What happened that day? Kenzie says that the way they questioned her was like, what was she wearing at the time you saw her? She said she was wearing underwear and a bra. The FBI would say, no, that's not right. So they would show her photos and videos and say that we have evidence against you. What you said as a witness is not right. It was wrong. It does not match up to the evidence they found, and try to get her to doubt her memories. The officers then started to push the story to her, saying, hey, were you guys lesbian couple or were you guys into each other?
What happened? It's like, nothing happened. And so when he's asking this, I had this like black cloud in my head. And I'm thinking, well, I don't remember if I did it. So maybe Jamie did it. Well, then I guess she kissed me first.
Now, according to Kenzie, she kind of described this as an odd power being taken away kind of feeling. And she said to herself, I don't remember me doing it, so I guess Jamie had to kiss me. And this is kind of how the interrogation started to go. She started to say something, they would say no, she would try to recollect the memories, and they would give her like a story and ask her certain questions, and she started to kind of go off of what they were claiming that she did. According to Kenzie, it was as if she started to manipulate her own memories to match what they wanted the story to be. Kenzie says that at this time she needed a break. She left for a couple hours, 2 hours, came back and asked the officers, would I need a lawyer? Then the officer said, you can get a lawyer, but we can't say you cooperated. So I guess being a 19, 20 years old, she was under almost like a very pressure fear tactic that has never happened to her before. And according to FBI, Kenzie went on about a story of how Jamie wanted to touch her behind. Kenzie got mad. She hit Jamie, and Jamie hit against the wall and fell. Did you stomp her? The officer says. Kenzie said to herself, did I stomp her? And started to question herself and her memories, but also at the same time started to confess. Overall claims that this was a spontaneous thing that happened at a fit of rage because Jamie was trying to hit on her. Now, the third day, FBI asked her to write a confession. According to Kenzie, in a podcast she did later on, more recently in 2019, quote, it's as if I have almost two memories. One, a memory with colors, emotions, and sounds. And the other is like images put together, black and white. Kenzie says that she did not have a great relationship with her parents, so she couldn't talk to them about this. And she also says that she couldn't tell her friends about this. I mean, this was a huge, big deal for her. I mean, for anyone to go through. 3 weeks since her interrogation, she was arrested, and she was actually one of the first Americans, I believe, to be extradited to Korea for a murder charge. Now, once she was in Korea, because she technically confessed, in Korea, you had to do something called a live reenactment. This is part of the trials and evidence where the suspects have to reenact what they did. And at the reenactment, when she went back to that motel, she says that this is when she knew 100% that she did not do it and that the memories in her mind was totally different. And to the Korean police now, she had to confess again, but she refused to do so.
It was very telling for me, at least, when she was doing the reenactment of the crime in that bathroom, that she actually corrected a South Korean police officer who was acting as a victim. She corrected the position of the head. And later, when I said that if you weren't there, how could you even do that? And her answer was she was getting in the spirit of the reenactment. It leaves me no doubt that she confessed to the true crime.
And she said, quote, when they were getting agitated at me for not confessing, I didn't want to lose that control again. Referring to how being under immense pressure can lead to a false memory being implanted like a brainwashing. They didn't have any physical evidence that she ended her friend's life. Now, according to the witnesses and police, originally they say that Kenzie had the same clothes on the next day that she had at the party the night before, and she did not have any blood or any stains on her clothing. Which, if she had the same clothes on, I mean, she should have blood on her shoes, on her clothing, if she was a suspect.
Why did you confess?
Because they said they had evidence against me.
So?
And they said that if I
What
cooperated
evidence?
with them, that it would be easier on me.
In what way?
I was trying to cooperate
By giving a confession?
by helping. If I spilled the milk, I was going to clean it up.
Right.
They said that I had done it. I don't remember doing it. I didn't do it.
Now, she was in Korea for months as she was awaiting her trial. And in the first trial, because she refused to confess again to the Korean police, and with no physical evidence, they found her not guilty. But prosecutors appealed the case, and she was awaiting for the second trial, which overall took about 6 months, and that came back as not guilty as well. Now, at least in the Supreme Court trial, she was able to go back to America and wait, which the entire thing took about 3 years. And finally, the verdict was that she was found not guilty. Now, in this older documentary with Nancy Grace, Jamie's parents said that they were upset Kenzie walk free because, they did think that she was a suspect according to the FBI. And Anna, Jamie's roommate, says that she can't be sure to say that Kenzie can be a killer because she was known to be a very nice girl. She cooperated with the Korean police originally, just like every other witnesses. But of course, someone being pointed that you did something and you're on trial for it, people will see you differently even if they can't see you actually doing that. This is really interesting because this has happened time and time again, where mind control, brainwashing, implanting a false memory is a thing, and especially for those who might have a weaker consciousness, or especially if you're young, like a 19-year-old who don't have experience like this. It's one of the reasons why people can fall into these interrogations, because they can implant something that you didn't do or coerce you into saying something under pressure. One of the reasons why she says that she regrets that she did not actually get a lawyer. She tried to, but the FBI twisted the words to say, hey, if you get a lawyer, well, it might look bad for you during the trial. And Kenzie was actually on a podcast called Wrongful Conviction, and she says that her goal of speaking up, which she did not want to originally, was to educate people about the fact that wrongful convictions do happen. People need to know and be educated about your rights if you happen to be in a situation like she did. I personally have been interrogated by the police as well. I'll talk about it in a bit, but it is an intense thing, you guys, and I can see how people can be coerced into saying these things. But story time at the end. So what could have happened then if Kenzie was not the suspect? Now, it's interesting because Jamie was found completely clothless, but there was no evidence of assault. And the way she was found with so much anger and passion that somebody had to just randomly do this. Now, could it be that these military guys got maybe angry that these girls wouldn't come with them and decided to follow them and kind of stalk them? Maybe they didn't follow them right behind them, but saw where their rooms were, kind of waited outside of the motel. And as Jamie was about to take a shower, maybe they got angry and decided to do this. Maybe they were drunk and were on drugs maybe and decided to do something crazy. So does that mean Kenzie's memory that she went back to check on her friend is also false, or it is true, but where did that shower noise come from? Now, is Kenzie's memories all screwed up now? But she did say this original testimony when she was first just a witness when this case happened. I have to say your memories, at least in the first witness statement, had to be the most correct. And as time goes by, your memories get more cloudy. And again, I just believe that it's crazy how Anna, the roommate, and why was she okay? I mean, why didn't they attack her? I mean, if she could have been a possible witness. Maybe they did see that she was sleeping, but maybe she was pretending. Who knows? And if the people right next door in room 102 heard a loud noise at 4:15 a.m. in the morning, why didn't anybody else hear it? And the last thing, did Kenzie really not do it? I mean, her statements to the police and what happened is pretty crazy. I mean, it is totally possible that, especially if you're under the influence, and someone's inside of the bathroom, maybe she thought she heard the shower running, but she actually didn't. Another thing that discredited Kenzie was that Kenzie asked Jamie, "Are you okay?" when she went back, and she claims that she heard Jamie say, "I'm okay," and she left. According to the police, when they did the testing, they said that they cannot hear the other person when the person's inside of the bathroom. So Kenzie could not have heard someone say, "I'm okay," but Are these testings 100% reliable? Maybe, maybe not. With the amount of force that Jamie was found in her state, I don't know if a female could have done that. I mean, if there was a loud female catfight, I believe people would have also heard that. Kenzie was a lot bigger than Jamie. It could have been, but I mean, they would have found some blood evidence outside or inside of Kenzie's room or something. Now, Kenzie is a mom now. 22 years later, she says that she still has to monitor her behavior because this title of a suspect, a murderer, still follows her even if she was found not guilty. She says that even her son having a play date with other people at her son's classmates' houses, she felt sometimes obligated to tell her about the past to make sure that she's honest. And she says that one time she told this to her son's friend's mom and they actually cut her off, like no more play dates with her son. Yeah, I get it, there's always doubts because guilty people can be released without no physical evidence. So people might feel iffy around people who might have been pointed as murder suspects. And I believe she tried to sue the FBI as well for the false confession later on through the United States court, but the case was dismissed. The crazy thing is, you guys, whoever has done this to Jamie, beautiful 19-year-old, young, bright, smart woman, is still out there. That just gives me the chills. The CID originally looked over the male suspects. Can DNA testing be done over 20 years later? Let's try to help this case and bring Jamie's parents and Jamie the justice that she deserves. Because again, the suspect is out there living among us. But again, my personal story time, I also was investigated by the Korean police for a certain thing that someone reported me on, and they really ham on you. And they really like reword the question. You know your rights, like they read you the rights, but because you're under so much immense pressure, you're like, I'm innocent. You're just under this weird pressure, and you know they're the authorities, they have the power to maybe put you in jail, and you just have this like cloud of fear over you. And especially if they say, we have evidence of this and that, like you're like, oh my god. And if you do not have the strong mental capacity and strength, like it will break you down because you will forget about your rights as people are pressuring you. And it's really a mind game when it comes to these things. Share and like this video so that we can reach as many people as we can. Thank you for watching and see you on my next video.